Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm back on this horrible scene of what seems to be a horrible trend here in America is mass shootings. And so this is about America is fastly becoming a country known for its mass shootings. So mass shootings in the US were where they have occurred when and where they have occurred in 2018. And so, what's sad is right now, as I'm on here, there's another shooting that just took place. And it is becoming no longer just a thing in Chicago or just a thing in some of the war torn countries. Right here in America, it is so violent and fastly becoming a place where there are mass shootings. And so it's very scary. And a lot of this seems to come out of, I'm going to say, I feel like it comes from the defiance. There are people who do not want to give up guns. And they're extremely, how would you say, when a person is just, no matter what you say and do, they're extremely defiant and militant when it comes to guns. And so, mass shootings in the US, when and where they have occurred in 2018, this is by a Courtland Jeffrey. And so, I'm reading this because I felt like this has a lot to do with what's been going on lately. So the number of mass shootings around the country in 2018 have risen above 300 so far. That is really scary. According to the data from the Gun Violence Archive, a total of 307 mass shooting incidences have occurred as of October the 27th. Wednesday night shooting, which left 13 dead at a bar in Thousand Oaks, California, marked the 307th mass shooting incident so far this year. In 2017, the US saw a total of 346 mass shootings. So in here, there's statistics for other years that show mass shootings. Okay. And so I believe if you click on it, it'll show you the other years of the mass shootings. And so if you click on this, you'll get Gun Violence Archive mass shootings, the year of 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17. And so if we just let's randomly pick mass shooting list of 2013. And yeah, it gives you all of the different states and gives you people a number, a total of who was killed, where it happened, the city, and who were injured. And so in 2013, when you look at California, it looked as though California didn't really have any major issues with shooting. There was 0, 0, 0 killed in 2013. That's their data. Now, if we click off of this and if we go, well, actually, if we go back to 2013, it made it seem like there was hardly any, there were no mass shootings. But when you go to 2017, I'm sure the numbers are going to start changing. And so for California, don't really see anything just yet. So that might be the earlier part, or the, I don't know how, if they get it in the earlier part of the year or the later part of the year. But most definitely, you see there's some people that are injured. They have like a list, like numbers. And so it's rather long, but you can look at it. So if you're wondering, there is a gun violence archive where you can look at the statistics, or their so-called statistics. And so it's just sad because a lot of this stuff is happening, and I feel like it comes from when they started having the protest about nonviolence and putting more bans on guns, and they started elaborating on how they wanted to get rid of guns and how they wanted to make it harder for people to purchase guns, and that they would have to do a thorough background check. And so I feel like when people that aren't really wrapped that tight, or they have mental issues, or if it isn't even mental issues, if they're just really extremely violent, and maybe they aren't mentally ill, they're just like a psychopath, and they hear something about non-violence and no guns, it sets them off. And when you start labeling it and saying that you're going to put restrictions on it, that's when it becomes a fight. And in the minds of people who are not really rational, they look at that as a challenge. And then they decide to go out and take innocent lives. And so I have more to this story. So there doesn't seem to be an official definition for mass shootings in the United States, but according to the Gun Violence Archive, a mass shooting is described as 4 or more individuals being shot or killed in the same general time and location. So the FBI defines a mass killing as killing 3 or more people in a public place. But the federal agency also defines mass murderer as someone who has killed 4 or more people in the same location. So the Gun Violence Archive lists itself as a not-for-profit, you hear that? Organization that documents gun violence and gun crime nationally. Okay. At least what's been reported correctly, I take it. And so there, I believe, might have been video on this, but I wanted to go to this incident here. So a driver opened fire at a vehicle with teens inside after one of them pulls a gun. So it's another shooting incident. So the driver opened fire at a vehicle with teens inside after one of them pulls a gun, Harris County Sheriff says. And so there's another shooting. They say the suspected shooter opened fire at an 18-year-old who had pulled an apparent weapon in Southwest Houston. So a lot of shootings are occurring. So this is associated with video, and so I'm going to turn it up and see if it is something that can be heard. So I'll try to scroll back. Apparently the sound is down on it, or it may not have sound. It may just be showing the scene. So this is this crime scene right now, or at least it was, that was going on. And so there's so many shootings that are happening at random, and it's very scary. And I was thinking of some of the laws that they come up with. You know, it seems to ignite people to do the unthinkable. And it's just like in Florida where they have the stand your ground, and people look at that as an opportunity to pick on someone so they can make a case to say that they were defending themselves with a gun when in fact they used the gun law as an excuse to shoot somebody because they don't like something about them, or they don't like their nationality. And so let's get off of this because apparently it was, I believe it was something that was more like silent. So a nurse surgeon fires back at the NRA, which is the National Rifle Association, with pictures of gun trauma. This is my lane. Okay. Hashtag this is my the incidents in Oaks. And so um, they've been taking the social media, want prayers, they want a call to end the gun violence, and they want more stricter laws. Yet some people say that they illness or they're just with the Thousand Oaks situation, which was really scary. Now, there was something else to that Thousand Oaks situation. More recently, there were some articles that surfaced on that shooter at the Thousand Oaks bar. Okay. Now, this is what's really sad. Okay. Now, there was a victim, or what would be a victim that had survived the Las Vegas shooting. And this person happened to be at the bar in Thousand Oaks, and he died there. And so, so he survived the Las Vegas mass shooting. Then he died in Thousand Oaks, California shooting. And so this is why this is so scary and so crazy that this stuff is happening. This is by German Lopez. Telemachus Orfanos mother called for stronger gun laws after his death. Okay. Now here he is here, pictured here. This is a guy who was actually out in Vegas when there was the shooting out there. And he survived only to come here back to a bar in California and thinking he's going to have a good time and he's got his life, and he, you know, he was able, you know, to get out of a horrific incident only to be thrust into another. Now his name is rather long, so correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sorry for not pronouncing the name correct. So Telemachus Orfanos, 27. He survived the Las Vegas mass shooting on October 2017. And this is him pictured here. So, which it killed 58 people and injured hundreds more. And so, a little more than a year later, Orfanos died in another mass shooting at a bar in Thousand Oaks, California. So Orfanos was a military veteran. To make matters even worse, and this is Veterans Weekend, he served in the U.S. Navy from 2011 to 2014, according to Fox News. So he moved in with his parents in California after leaving the Navy and worked at a car dealership. I don't want prayers. I don't want thoughts, Orfanos' mother, Susan Schmidt, Orfanos told reporters. I want gun control. And I hope to God nobody else sends me any more prayers. So I want gun control and no more guns. So Orfanos' father, Mark Orfanos, didn't condemn the shooter, okay? Calling the shooter as much of a victim as anybody else, which that would be hard for me to do. So my hat's off to the father, because I don't think I could have that kind of restraint. So I'm not gonna vilify this kid because he's got parents, and they're grieving as well too. So the father said this, and this was Orfanos' father, even though they lost their son to this shooter. And I feel sorry for them as well. So until I find out particularly what the specifics are with this kid who did this shooting, I'm not going to vilify him. And so this is the mother, and she was very, very upset and distraught behind the whole situation. So I'm going to try to see if this video will play. If it doesn't, oh well, but it might.
My son was in Las Vegas with a lot of his friends, and he came home. He didn't come home last night, and I don't want prayers. I don't want thoughts. I want gun control, and I hope to God nobody else sends me any more prayers. I want gun control. No more guns.
And you hear it. And so this is what makes people enraged, because these are innocent lives being taken at the hands of someone who is unhinged and has a lot of issues. And I'm saying that because there was video on the shooter, and I will get to that. So this basically is under, I think it was Twitter that showed this, and this is by a Veronica Miracle, and basically says the same thing that the lady just expressed, which was Telemachus Orfanos' mother. And so she says he survived hashtag Las Vegas shooting, but he did not survive hashtag Thousand Oaks massacre. So what happened to Orfanos is statistically very unlikely, okay? But the fact it can happen at all, that there are even 2 awful mass shootings within such a close time frame shows how out of control these tragedies are in America. According to the Gun Violence Archive, there has been almost 1 mass shooting a day for the past few years. The organization defines a mass shooting as an event in which 4 or more people, excluding the shooter, are shot but not necessarily killed in a similar time and place. By this definition, there are 311 mass shootings in 2018, resulting in more than 310 deaths and at least 1,270 other injuries. There are 313 days in 2018 so far. Okay. So in 2017, Gun Violence Archive documented 346 mass shootings. In 2016, 382 mass shootings. In 2015, 335 mass shootings. So the number, it fluctuates from year to year, but it is generally close to a mass shooting a day. Not a week, not a month, a day, a mass shooting a day. That is really sad. So after these horrific events, politicians and pundits, which latch on to all sorts of explanations, as to why these shootings keep happening. This is the problem we have here, and I'm adding myself into this article. It always tends to be excuses for these shootings. There's excuses for these shootings. And usually when it comes to people of different backgrounds, they're characterized differently. And so it's always mental illness, or it's misogyny, or it's anti-Semitism. It's some other form of extremism or some type of hate. So in individual shootings, these all, of course, can play a role. But when you want to explain why America sees so many of these mass shootings in general, none of these factors in individual shootings give a satisfying answer. Only one thing does: America's easy access to guns. America does not have a monopoly of mental health issues, bigots, or extremists. What is unique about the US is that it makes it so easy for people with these types of issues to obtain a gun. America's gun problem, it comes down to two basic problems. First, America is uniquely weak on their gun laws. Other developed nations, at the very least, require one or more background checks, and almost always something more rigorous behind or beyond that to get a gun. From specific training courses to rules for locking up firearms to more arduous licensing requirements to specific justifications, isn't jurisdictions, but justifications besides self-defense for owning a gun. So in the US, even a background check isn't a total requirement. And that's scary. I'm saying that. The current federal law is riddled with loopholes and snared by poor enforcement. So there are many ways around even a basic background check. There are simply very few barriers, if any, to getting a gun in the US. Second, the US has a ton of guns. We have lots of guns. It is estimated that 2017, the number of civilian-owned firearms in the US was 120.5 guns. And so that's probably a huge number per 100 residents. Like I was saying, a huge number. Okay, so meaning there were more firearms than people. The world's second-ranked country was Yemen, a quasi-failed state torn by civil war, where there were 52.8 guns per 100 residents, according to an analysis from a small arms survey. So the countries and territories with the highest number of civilian firearms per 100 residents. Look at all of these countries. And I'm just going to say there are countries that you would think, you know, some of them you think, oh, they don't really have guns there. And then others you're like, oh, yeah, they got a lot of guns. It's like Luxembourg, Iraq. You would think Iraq would have that. Germany, France, Portugal, Pakistan, Sweden, New Zealand, places like that. But when you get up here to that blue line, it goes all the way out, 120.5 per 100 residents. That's civilian firearms, and that is the US. We are at the top when it comes to guns. So both of these factors come together to make it uniquely easy for someone with any violent intent to find a firearm, allowing them to carry out a horrific shooting. This is born out of the statistics. The US has nearly 6 times the gun homicide rate of Canada, more than 7 times that of Sweden and nearly 16 times that of Germany, according to the United States data for 2012, compiled by The Guardian. So these gun deaths are a big reason America has a much higher overall homicide rate, which includes non-gun deaths than other developed nations. Homicides by firearm per 1 million people. Look at this graph here. And guess who's in the red and who's at the top of the list? US. Out of everyone else, all the other countries, US, in terms of homicide, we rank the highest, 29.7, out of all of the other countries that are developed nations. Okay, so the research compiled by the Harvard School of Public Health Injury Control Research Center is also pretty clear. After controlling for variables such as socioeconomic factors, other crime, places with more guns that have more gun deaths, researchers have found that this to be true, that not just with homicide, but also with suicides, which in recent years were around 60% of the US gun deaths, domestic violence and violence against police. As a breakthrough analysis, the UC Berkeley's Franklin Zimring and Gordon Hawkins in 1990s found it's not even the US that has more crime than other developed countries. Okay. This chart, based on data, Jeffrey Swanson, Duke University, shows that the US is not an outlier when it comes to the overall crime. Okay, so this is like violent crime at an average. So it shows nonviolent crime, and then it shows violent crime. And most of your violent crimes seem to happen more, it claims here from the graph, in Australia. So instead of the US appears to have more lethal violence and is driven in large part by the prevalence of guns, series of specific comparisons to the death rates from property crime and assault in New York City, London show how numerous differences in death risks can be explained even while general patterns are similar. So Zimring and Hawkins wrote, a preference for crime of personal force and willingness and ability to use guns in robbery make similar levels of property crime 54 times as deadly in New York City as in London. So homicides in 15 industrialized countries. On average, the assaults in the US are 3 times more likely to involve guns than in any of the other countries that you see below here. That dark purple line that is ranking above all the other purple lines is the US in terms of homicides in 15 industrialized countries. And so the rate per 100,000 per year in 2012. And so we rank in terms of the US the highest. So this is in many ways intuitive. So people of every country get into arguments and fights with family and friends and peers. But in the US, it's much more likely that someone will get angry in an argument and be able to pull out a gun and kill someone. The researchers have found that the stricter gun laws could help. But in 2016, a review of 130 studies in 10 countries published in the epidemiologic reviews found that the new legal restrictions on owning and purchasing guns tended to be followed by a drop in gun violence. So a strong indicator that restricting access is the issue to guns can save lives. So a review of the US evidence by RAND also links some gun control measures, including background checks, to reduce injuries and deaths. So that doesn't mean that Bigots, extremists will never be able to carry out a shooting in places with strict gun laws. But even the strictest gun laws can't prevent every shooting. Exactly. So that's what the argument is from some people. And guns are not the only contributor to a violent act or to violence. So other factors include, for example, poverty, urbanization, alcohol consumption, and the strength of criminal justice systems. But when researchers control for other confounding variables, they have found time and time again that America's loose access to guns is a major reason the US is so much worse in terms of gun violence than its developed peers. So, America, with its lax laws and abundance of firearms, makes it uniquely easy for people to commit massacres. Until the US confronts that issue, it will continue seeing more gun deaths than the rest of the developing world and see more survivors escape from one shooting only to die in another one. For more on America's gun violence problem, read Vox Explainer. And so you can access, this is out of Vox, and you can access these articles. Now, what I found really disturbing about this here is the shooter. And it actually even said that it was disturbing. Now, what was disturbing about the Thousand Oaks shooting gunman, he posted on his Instagram during the time he was shooting in the bar. So, fact is, I had no reason to do it. Thousand Oaks gunman posted to Instagram during the massacre. Okay, this is out of the USA Today. And this is really scary because he was texting or posting what he was doing while he was shooting. And so that's really disturbing. So residents near Thousand Oaks, California, already reeling from the shock of the mass shooting, were confronting a host of other issues, so I'm trying to click in here and had a lot of interruption. Thousand Oaks, California, Ian David Long, the gunman who killed 12 people at a country music bar, posted on social media during the deadly rampage, according to the law enforcement officials. The first call to law enforcement came in at 11:19 p.m. Wednesday. Officials said the authorities arrived at the Borderline Bar and Grill in Thousand Oaks, California. 3 minutes later, they entered the building at 11:25 p.m. Long, who's 28 years of age, he first posted on Instagram at 11:24 p.m. It's too bad I won't get to see all of the illogical, pathetic reasons people will put in my mouth as to why I did it, the military veteran said in his post. Fact is, I had no reason to do it, and I just thought, exploitive. Life is boring, so why not? Long posted this message, according to ABC News and BuzzFeed. So he posted this message while he was doing the shooting. 3 minutes later, Long posted, I hope people call me insane. 2 smiley faces emojis that he put beside it. Would that just be a big ball of irony? Yeah, I'm insane, but the only thing you people do after these shootings is hopes and prayers, or keep you in my thoughts. So he posted this. He added, every time, ellipsis, and wonder why these keep happening. 2 smiley faces emojis. Long ended the killing spree by taking his own life. The Ventura County Sheriff's Office requested that the social media service preserves the communications until the post can be subpoenaed with a search warrant or court order. So the posts have already been taken down. Authorities have not yet determined a motive for the attack. A stretch of Rolling Oaks Drive and the street leading to the Borderline Bar and Grill remain closed Saturday today. So investigators, because it's a crime scene, are wearing white hazmat style suits and respirators over their face to continue the process and processing the scene that Long had left behind. They'll keep going until at least Tuesday, and Ventura County Sheriff's Department spokesman said. So they're right now, that whole place is taped off and closed because it is a crime scene. And so I guess there was video accompanied with this, but I just thought that this was really disturbing that he actually, while he was doing, there were a couple of pauses during the rounds of gunfire. And this was when he was, texting in his Instagram and making the post of his thoughts while he was actually doing the killing. And so that is really eerie. And so I just thought I would bring this out. I don't know, maybe some other people have seen this developing story, which it is still unfolding because he's still under investigation and they're still trying to come up with if there were any other motives. I also seen where there was an article saying that he had a girlfriend or that he may have thought his girlfriend was going to attend the bar. So there's so many things they're trying to come up with as to why this gunman might have been, set off to carry out these horrific acts. So anyway, he's pictured in that article. So it says Thousand Oaks shooting Marine veteran Ian David Long named as. So actually, that was like 2 days ago. So the one that I just read was more closer to what they've come up with now. And so I believe when they did the first couple of articles, it was when the initial incident had happened and they were trying to uncover, was there any motive? They said they were going through his social media and all of his belongings and what have you to see they could investigate to find out what would have driven this person to do such a horrific act. And so far now they've come up with the post that he put on social media, which they have taken down. And so I guess they're going through everything to try to see if there was something that prompted him, if there was some telltale indicator. Okay, so enough of that. It's just really crazy. A lot of stuff's been happening and there's a lot of sadness, a lot of grieving, and then there's a lot of anger associated with all of this. I have to agree with the article that I was reading earlier. It must be easy access anytime they don't do thorough background checks, which I was under the impression they did, but apparently not. And then too, the other thing is even if they do background checks and people who are criminals or, if they're, they don't have a squeaky clean, background, they're not going to purchase guns out of a gun store. They're going to try to get guns or access to guns like underground or somebody that's selling them on the street, somebody they know, friends of friends that are involved in that kind of, a racket. Because I believe, too, at one while they were selling guns on the internet. I don't know if that's still going on. So, but I know that who was behind it was some law enforcement officers. They had guns and they were, I think some people, like buy and trade and sell. And so some people were actually purchasing guns off, they could order them on the internet. And so that was what was happening. I don't know if that's still going on. They might be a little more stricter, which I believe still there's a way. If there's a will, there's a way, especially if people have the money. And usually people, they act different when you have money to give them. And if the guns are worth something, and people think they can get a lot of cash for it, then they're going to sell it. Even if it is to a person that may not, be all right upstairs. It may have, some mental issues, or maybe just extremely violent and wants to prove a point, such as this incident that just took place, which is very scary for someone to be posting and texting while you're murdering people. So to me, it doesn't seem like it's so much mental. Yeah, you could say, they wanted to say PTSD, that because maybe he was going through post-traumatic stress, but I feel like those are excuses. This guy, he's just evil, and he wanted to prove a point, and he did. And he took his own life, and he posted his comments, and I believe that's where it all came from. There are people in this world who, despite what you think, you can make these excuses for them all day long, but it doesn't erase what happened. So anyway, with that being said, I'm going to let this video associated with, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was associated with a video. So I'm going to see if I can turn it up.
It's devastating. It's like welcome to hell. I don't even know what to say. We're all walking around kind of in a trance.
I'm a nurse, and one of my friends is a nurse at Los Robles, and we found out a nurse's child was one of the ones that was killed, so that's been very hard. A couple of weeks ago, a plane closed down the freeway, so Thousand Oaks has had its challenges in the last few weeks. So, but we're all here trying to deal with it.
It's tough. It's been a tough couple of days. It's a great community, and everyone's going together, and we're all hanging in there.
So there you have it, and it's just really sad that it seems like, unfortunately, the way things are going, that I don't even want to say it, but I had said this even in other videos, that unfortunately, because I feel like it's coupled with a lot more than just easy access to guns. I feel like when you say we need to be strict on guns, we need to do this and this and that to guns, it ignites people to do the unthinkable. It's almost like you're pretty much challenging them to go out and do the evil bidding. It's like they're showing you that it doesn't matter how many laws or how many rules that you put in place, there's a will, there's a way for horrible individuals to get their hands on guns, unfortunately. And it did say that, it did clarify that in articles, that no matter what you do, it's not going to, deter some of the baddies, if they're bigots or extremists. Where there's a will, unfortunately, there's a way for individuals to get their hands on firearms. But the sad part about it is that the U.S. ranks above all developing nations. And so that's something to consider, that, yeah, there is a lot of problems. The U.S. is not what people on the outside thought it was. Unfortunately, we have a lot of our problems that are right here on the U.S. soil. So with that being said, I'm going to let this video go. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for listening. And hopefully we won't see another one of these incidences occur, at least not too soon. But I don't even want to say that, because it seems like as soon as you're trying to recover from one incident, another happens right around the corner. Thanks for listening.